Hi, welcome to the NAS Spinning podcast with me, Phil Aston. And on this episode, I'm absolutely delighted to have with me Geoff Downes and Chris Braide from the Downes Braide Association, DBA for short. Now, I know many of NAS Spinning magazine viewers know Geoff very much from the Buggles, Yes, and Asia. And Chris Braide, you've worked with lots of different various people, from Beyonce and Britney Spears and Hans Zimmer, lots of different people. And I've been playing the new album literally for the last few days non-stop. And this is album number 5, isn't it? If I've got that right. Yeah. And you're such varied people in where your backgrounds are from. How did you come together or want to work with each other in the beginning?
Well, we met. I'll start the ball rolling with this one.
Yeah.
We met actually. Chris was involved with Trevor on a project called The Producers.
Yeah.
And we were doing some shows around that time, and I think Chris was just about to move to the States at that point, and I met Chris for the first time, and Chris said, I was a big fan of the Buggles, and I'd like to do some writing with you. And I said, well, let's get cracking. So it was really a simple thing like that. I think that's going back to about 2011, something like that. So beginning of or the end of 2010. So it was a great meeting and a chance meeting, and we sort of carried on from that point.
I mean, because one of the things I love about this is it almost feels as if now is the time for these kind of collaborations to feel so much more natural. I was saying to Chris before we went live that in the 80s and 70s, there were people into rock or progressive rock, and there were people over here into pop or funk or soul, and they all lived in their little silos. And even festivals back in those days were for everybody, one genre was put on stage. No one mixed them up. Whereas now, maybe because of the world of streaming and stuff, and how young people discover music, it just feels natural now that both of you from two different worlds have come together, are together making this music that just sounds completely non-tribal and non-silo, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we're all from an eclectic sort of mix, I think. As Geoff said, I was involved with the producers, and obviously, Trevor was involved with a lot of great pop music, and I was involved with pop music as well. But there seems to be a thread running through everything that we do, and that it's, real musicianship and sort of, I suppose, slightly widescreen, if you like, music that we all kind of like. So it was more related than you'd think. In fact,
yeah, and I think pop music, there wasn't really so much that division. I mean, you'd see, Jethro Tull and ABBA in the charts, back in
that's true. Yeah,
and 10cc and ELO, and there was a lot of crossing over between what people now term as progressive music. 10cc were a really progressive band, but they were a very pop band as well. So I think the way that both Chris and I have nurtured our careers is not really that. There is a lot of common ground as well, and certainly through obviously meeting with Trevor, my relationship with Trevor and pop music and everything like that. There's not really a massive dividing line that some people might think looking in from the outside.
Yeah. Well, the new album number 5, Celestial Songs, is almost like a celebration of the human condition, of life itself. All the songs, the way it's sequenced, is a really positive album. For those of you watching, if you're watching the news too much, you need to listen to this album, because it will just take you somewhere far, far nicer. It opens with is it Barney Ashton who does the vocal voice introductions on "Look What You Do," and this is a wonderful, gentle opening to the album. And Chris, you mentioned the lyric, "Give me time, that's all I want, because nobody knows." What was the kind of, how did this song come together?
It's funny, the vocal on that is really a rough one-take vocal. It's one of those, where you have you get on the mic and you just sing stuff. Sometimes that's what I do with artists I'm working with also. I just get on the mic and just sing. we'll have a sort of rough idea of what it is or a chord progression. And so I did that with that piece of music I was working on. And then I thought, well, I'll go back and I'll make it make sense. But when I listened back, it was all making sense. It was one of those things. It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes it does. It just, the music kind of dictates, and I don't know what it is, some kind of, maybe it's like divine intervention or something. But it said that line, and I thought, well, that's it. I don't want to rewrite that. It's kind of everything. It makes a lot of sense to me, with life and love and all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's just so positive as an opening song, and it kind of draws you in to the next one, Clear Light, which is another beautiful song. And this song is about how your ego can blind you to the beauty of life, and also features a fantastic guitar solo by, is it Dave Bainbridge on guitar?
Dave Bainbridge,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Stunning.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's lots of moments on that on this album when he plays really, really well. One of my favourite tracks is track number 3, which is one of your singles, wasn't it? Which is Keep On Moving. I love the video to this. It kind of reminds me of, for me personally, of growing up in the 70s and 80s, and being on holiday and coming home from school and it's snowing outside and stuff. Was that the kind of visuals you had in your mind when you pulled the song together?
I don't know, really. I suppose, there's a tendency with, when Geoff and I write, there's something nostalgic about it. But I always thought that, what I loved about Geoff's chord progression sometimes was they had a nostalgia about them. And Geoff and I've talked about this, the intro of Video Kill the Radio Star is very sort of noble. And you would say, Geoff, like almost northern kind of, brass band music or something. And so when we write, it has that, and maybe because we're two northerners or something, it's got that thing. So
we're both from Cheshire, so that might have something to do with it. Might be in the water in Cheshire or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, something about it. And so I always just end up writing lyrically about, I mean, the older you get, the further you've got to look back, let's face it. So
that's true.
It seems like, it just
but you're looking back in a positive way. As they say, you'll keep on moving. You're not kind of looking back wishing you'd stayed there or anything. It hasn't got that kind of melancholy edge that you might expect from a song that looks back in time.
In a way, there is a melancholy edge, though, because it's sort of an apology to everything that you leave behind when you keep on moving, and that's inevitably happens. But you've got to keep on moving, otherwise you're stuck.
But musically, it kind of keeps everything on an upward keel in a way. I love the keyboard solo after about the 4-minute mark that comes in, and then again there's another stunning solo from Dave, guitar solo towards the end as well, isn't there?
Oh yeah, he's our secret weapon. I mean, he elevates the songs so much. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when we first started out with DBA, we were very much focused on being, the duo, which sort of is similar, as opposed to, when I was with Trevor and the Buggles, and we had that sort of understanding together. So I think that that was the idea when we first set out. But I think as time, when we got onto the second and third albums, we were thinking, well, we should maybe open this up a bit more, and actually, have a proper rhythm section, that was not, we weren't just playing around with drum machines and that sort of thing. So I think that it's been a real help to us and progression for us to have, a lot of people coming in. Well, a lot of people. I mean, we've had the same rhythm section pretty much all the way through. So I think it's great because it adds another dimension to the music, and I think that's something that Chris and I really want to do, is to expand the music, not just have it as a couple of guys messing around with a few demos. We wanted to make it something more substantial.
I think the whole album is almost like cinematic in its kind of structure, and how the kind of visuals the music gave me personally, and I'm sure it will give many people similar things. The next track, The Darker Side of Fame, is a more serious song, and I think it's a very important song because, especially with how musicians now take more care of their mental health and they're the deeper awareness on these things, and especially go back into the 70s when bands were forced to make, well, not forced, I suppose, made 2 albums a year, then toured. And so instead of touring an album that came out and then 2 years later doing another one, it was just non-stop, wasn't it? And I think was that the kind of thing you were trying to get across with this?
It does resonate a lot with me, actually, because, I think that, a lot of musicians from my era that have been up there and been successful and done all these things, there are always those sides of things where it doesn't go so well, and you end up, there is another side to the music business. And music business is actually, it has a very cruel side to it in terms of the fact that, you're there 1 minute and you're not the next, and I think that is one of the elements of the song, is that, there is that other side of the whole coin where, you can be top of the charts and flying and doing all the rest of it. And then all of a sudden, there's a reality sets in and, things don't go, things go the opposite direction. And, I've been there myself. I've experienced that sort of thing myself. So it's a very interesting song from my standpoint.
Yeah, and
I was going to say, I met Michael Hutchence before he died, about 6 months before he died. And I spent sort of, a whole afternoon with him, just playing music and stuff in France. And that affected me really deeply, actually, when he died, because he seemed like someone that would never die, if you know what I mean. And that's the thing that shocks me and all of us, really, when someone's larger than life. I mean, we just lost Sinead O'Connor. These people are kind of like bright lights that burn very brightly for a very brief time, and Michael Hutchence actually said in one of the final interviews, we all have our wilderness periods, whether it's drugs, alcohol, lack of fame, or whatever, and it is just that thing that it's stark, like Geoff says, you could be number 1 minute and then, sweeping up the next.
Well, that's right, because a lot of bands in the 70s might have been given, say, a weekly wage, which might have been quite high at the time, and they probably thought that was really good. But behind the scenes, they weren't probably getting the royalties, and then something happens, and then the next thing they're back to their day job. And even in the modern times, you can have a band say, "Oh, people might ask you when you're going to play live or whatever," but it's not. Sometimes the amount of money that's required to do all of this, it's a lot of people who are fans of music, of musicians, don't understand sometimes the complexities behind that. The face put on of being a musician.
Look at something like the cruel rejection factor of something like the X Factor. Where people are given this little window of opportunity, and then
and it's gone.
The next minute they're completely irrelevant. And I think that in a way is a sad indictment of the way things have gone. In terms of the fact that people only really want to grasp that bit of fame, rather than actually saying, well, I want to make a career out of this. I want to play, I want to learn how to make great music. I want to do this, that, and the other. Very often it's this, the modern day aspect is people just want that glimpse of, whether it be 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, they just want to be there for that second. And I think that it's a shame because, music, when I was getting into music, people really wanted to learn their trade. They wanted to get better. They wanted to make themselves
better musicians,
unique and do unique things. And I think that aspect is dimmed quite a lot in recent years, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's so true. Actually, I think it seems like we all wanted to know one another. You wanted to sort of impress your peers or your idols, That was what we all wanted. You'd be in a garage somewhere rehearsing, going, "This is great," one day, and it's kind of, that was the dream. But the X Factor thing is just a whole other. I mean, it's I don't know if you'd ever find a David Bowie or an Elton John on X Factor because it's just all about one aspect. It's very one-dimensional. It is about the thrill of being in a recording studio. In the old days, you've been in the recording studio, and you've done something very creative, and you come out of there at the end of the night. You've got your cassette or your CD in the car, on the way home and stuff like that. You think, well, this is great. You're on a real high because you've created something great, and I think that
that, unfortunately, the people today who are on things like X-Factor, they're not going to get that buzz. They're getting this little buzz from being on telly for 5 minutes, and that's it. And I feel sad for them because they won't have experienced what we've experienced.
Absolutely.
Very, very true. There's nothing like the magic of just a few friends in a garage somewhere, literally playing music, and it starts to just happen as ideas kind of float to the surface. The next track, Hey Kid, is very serious. It's just piano and vocal, isn't it? And about guns and stuff. And it's quite a short song, but it's got a serious message, but it's done in a really, really good way. Was this an important subject for you to cover? As you said, you both got children.
Yeah, well, I was living in the States for about the last 10 years, and it just seemed the guns were ubiquitous. Every bloody second there was something about guns on the news in schools. And I had little kids, they were in, elementary school. It was just terrifying. And they'd say, it's rare, and it was, well, I keep seeing it every week. It's not rare enough, and I know it's a whole thing. And having lived there for 10 years, I'd get into conversations with friends of mine who were, moderate, sort of, intelligent people, and they would defend it. And I think it's a lost cause. I can't, so I just wouldn't go there. I just wouldn't have a conversation about it anymore because I find them really terrifying. I wouldn't even want to pick one up. So, the idea of guns and children, I mean, it's just, it's like your worst nightmare.
The next one, which is Will to Power. I love this one. I've put this one down as my second favorite track from the album. I love the kind of, I guess it's a keyboard bass driven riff at the start, but I love it. Absolutely love it.
It's a bass line, actually.
Yeah, bass line. The bass line. I just absolutely love it. And this is another lyric about finding light in your darkest hour. So it's another kind of, it feels like a theme within the songs about this looking, coming out of the darkness into light. There's like a thread going through the songs like this. And again, it's got a great guitar solo and a hypnotic kind of riff sitting behind that solo as well. So tell me a little bit about this song, because as I say, it's one of my faves.
Yeah, well, it's another one of those where it's the sum of its parts, because it starts with that gorgeous intro, which is like it's almost like Bond or something. I see the ski slope, and or the parachute, and it starts with that. But then the bass line that you mentioned, I've got to say, Andy Hodge is really great bass player. He's very unassuming, and he did that line right at the end because he was maybe bored with playing around the same thing, and he did that, and I thought, my God, that's absolutely fantastic.
It is.
I just put it everywhere. So it's one of those things that's born out of all of us together. Very creative, kind of, piece by piece, you just chip away and.
Those are the kind of things that when we're talking about getting personnel on board, those are the kind of things that you can't predict. And I think that both Chris and I, we take our hats off to people that can, around us that can come up with stuff like that, and it takes in a whole different direction. And I think Andy has been fantastic for us. He really gets, because I'm crazy about strange inversions of chords and that sort of thing, as Chris knows. But he always gets the right bass note in there. He's always very conscious of the music side of it, that he's not going to play, the wrong bass note against the intended chord. And I think that's really is a very intuitive thing. We're very lucky to have him on board because he's really good at at identifying that sort of stuff.
Yeah, look, the whole song is that like kind of hypnotic guitar riff that kind of is quite dominant throughout the latter part of the song as well, where Dave solos over it. It's just amazing. Be great live, I imagine. Great driving song.
Yeah.
The next one I put down as my third favourite. I suppose I could just say the whole thing is, but I've tried to be selective. Heart-Shaped Hole, which is nearly 9 minutes long. And this has got a melancholy aspect to it, because it's about, it could be an aging musician or actor who's still chasing the lights. We don't get a hint from the song whether there's less people in the audience than there were, but there's just a drive to continue to do that. I absolutely love the lyric and the story behind that. And the music as well is just sublime that goes with it. What was who came up with the idea for this one?
I mean, lyrically, it's sort of about, searching for things that, are sort of hollow, false gods or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it could, I always picture like the sort of light entertainer in Blackpool or something, sat in the dressing room and the kids are like, 300 miles up the motorway and it's just like, just one more show, and it's kind of tragic in a way. But there are so many people like that just, it's sort of, the fame ebbing away or whatever. And, it's not fulfilling. It doesn't work, it's anti-spiritual in a way, the pursuit of fame at any cost, it's related to Darker Side of Fame in a way.
Yeah, and I think that, funny enough, that was an area that we touched on with the Buggles, with a song like Artistry. It was the guy that used to work for the BBC, and then he was in B movies, and then he worked for the BBC. So there's that, and even Video Killed a Radio Star was really about a guy, who was on the radio, and effectively. He was in the silent films, and his voice didn't work with the film, so he was no longer a film star. So these are the sort of tragic little areas of how technology, in a way, has changed people's perception of how someone will fit in. Since some people sound great on the radio, but they don't make it on TV, for whatever reason. So. It's an interesting song, I think, Heart-Shaped Hole.
And a lovely guitar solo and a great instrumental section towards the end as well. What I love about the guitar parts is how the melodies fit in with the actual lyrical meaning and the music itself. It really fits in almost as if the guitar solos are an extra voice within the palette of the song.
Yeah, he's very intuitive player. Because he makes that fantastic middle section that Geoff wrote work and not get boring, because he keeps sort of changing emotion, every part of it, and it's fantastic.
And he really gets it. He really gets it. And ironically, we was at the same music college in Leeds together. So he was a few years behind me. So we had the same. We had the same piano teacher. We had this. He obviously, played guitar as well, brilliantly. So there's these funny little connections, and I think that's one of the reasons why he sort of gets it. He gets what we're about, and Dave really loves playing on the stuff. I know that he's genuine about that, which is great.
You can tell. On the next track, Dear Petra, which is obviously almost aimed directly at the negativity of news, especially at the moment, with all the wars and stuff, etc. And again, it's like mainly stripped down music, isn't it? Piano and vocal, but it really kind of pulls across to me the power of how music can heal, how it can take you away from the negativity of what's out there.
Yeah, Geoff sent me that piano piece, and I just thought it was so beautiful. It just fell out. It's just one of those songs that fell out, but it was originally written about something I'd seen about, not to go into great detail, but a sort of, a child abuse thing that I'd seen, which was just, seems so omnipresent at the moment. It's just exhausting to watch, But then when all this shit in Ukraine unfolded, I just thought, well, it's got to be rewritten now, and it's got to be a broader message.
Yeah, broader message. Yeah,
and it just sickens us all, because we're just observers. There's nothing we can do, and it's all I don't want to get into politics, but it's all been stoked by the political elite, and it's just exhausting to watch. And I'm sure it could all be sorted out with a couple of phone calls. But they don't want that, it seems, and the casualties are the kids,
or literally simplicity, or sitting down and listening to this album with a couple of beers in the same room. I'm sure that would, would sort it. The next
That's
one on the run, you mentioned in your notes it's got a drum beat reminiscent of running up that hill, and I suppose it has a little bit. But again, this is another song about coming out of the darkness into the light, isn't it? About getting rid of your demons and getting rid of stuff that's not good. So again, it's the way when I listen to the whole album, it's another part where this theme bubbles to the surface. Were you aware of how the songs were kind of like bolting themselves to each other with this kind of story?
Yeah. I think so, yeah. And we once did a photo session at a hotel in Sussex, and there was a chapel there with stained glass windows. And I remember Geoff turning around to me and saying, "This is perfect for our music." Because it's just there's a spiritual, yearning, I think, throughout. And look, it's the human condition. We're either up or we're down, and it's a way of getting to grips with, or the equilibrium, which is not always easy to find. So the songs, they are related unknowingly, really.
Yeah, fantastic. And the next one, "Goodbye to You, Sister Shame." This is with Andy Partridge. And what's this one actually about? Is this a similar thing about looking back at life, or looking at where you are in yourself?
Well, it's about trying to find love before you die. It's really just about that.
Yeah, that's pretty important. Yeah. And again, I put down in my notes 5 minutes 16 seconds in. It's actually the stunning the guitar solo again. To mention Dave, but he really lets rip at the end of this one, where he's kind of restrained himself and stuck to the melody lines and other songs. At this one, he just kind of lets go of the rail and just goes for it at the end. Fantastic stuff.
It really is. I mean, he got the whole Wings kind of, pastiche, kind of thing. So he sort of went for that. What was Wings' guitarist called? Hugh? I can't remember. That kind of thing.
I know what you mean.
Stadium, sort of, 1976. Yeah, he really got. And there's a great Hammond at the end that Geoff plays as well. And it's one of those things where it just kind of, the sort of the strings of the balloon are cut free.
Yes, it has got that feel. You've mentioned a couple of times that the album has almost got a spiritual feel, and I would say that it has, because it does feel like playing this all the way through. And I think for anyone watching this later on or listening to it, it's so important to listen to albums all the way through, because otherwise you miss out on the story or the overall feel that the creators of the music.
Well, we're very conscious about that. Yeah, we're very conscious about that, because Chris and I are both big vinyl heads, and I think that the beauty of vinyl is that rather than just bopping around with this dinosaur, you actually do sit down and listen to it. And a lot of the albums that I've been involved with, and probably Chris as well, is that you really want to just sit down and experience it, and not cherry pick each track and jump around, because a lot of these albums were made as albums, and I think that we're very conscious about making it, still doing that, making an album as an album, which is why we make it readily available on vinyl, and the actual running order is very important to us, and I think that is something, it's old school thinking, but at the same time it's the right way to treat the songs.
Well, it is. It's like looking at a famous painting where 3/4 of it have been covered up, and you can only see a quarter of it, and you think, well, that looks really nice. It's like listening to one track off an album. You don't get the whole story. No. And which brings us to the last one, which is Beyond the Stars. And this is another one where Barney Ashton does his narration, because that's what Barney's input feels like. It's like a storyteller just dropping in every so often to tie it all together. And this is the epic song, over 10 minutes long. And this could have easily had a very melancholy feel to it, because it is about the fact that everything must pass and everything moves on. But this is again where I feel it's got such a positive, healing, almost spiritual feel to the whole album. It is like an experience listening to this record. I mean, how do you both feel about this song and the whole piece of work that you're about to unleash on the world?
Well, I think the final track on any album is always going to be quite an important position, in terms of, because that's your sort of final memory once you've listened to the whole thing. And so, I think it's a very epic track. I think it's got a lot of finality to it, and I think that's one thing we wanted to get across with it, which is why it's positioned where it is.
It is, but
it can never be track 2, could it?
No.
Definitely. This is the end. When we were working on it, that's the end. But it's another one of those things where, sometimes you look at maybe, people that aren't into, this kind of music might look at something that's 11 minutes long and think, self-indulgence again, they're at it again. But it's not over long. It absolutely works, and that's the thing. I think when things sometimes, I don't know, if a song wants to be 7 minutes long, but it all works emotionally and it takes you there on that journey, then it's right to be 7 minutes long.
I think the lyrics have to have room to breathe, so that, and that's what I think that, there are some songs, and I think because I've been around a long time, like a lot of people have into progressive rock or any kind of music, you start to second guess. I know where this is going to go. I know that after the second verse we're going to go into a chorus and then maybe a solo. But on this particular song, I don't even think about that, because you say there's a line or a lyric, and then you almost need the lyric to breathe so that the music comes up behind it and takes it somewhere else. And I didn't even notice it was 10 minutes long. I mean, at the end, if this on the vinyl, this will be like something at the end of side 4, and you go, "Whoa!"
Right. It's like Tales from Topographic Oceans or something like that.
In a good way. Yeah. You'll go and have a cup of tea before you put it on again. It's No, it's really, really good. So when does the album come? When's the actual release date for it?
It's the
September the 8th.
September the 8th.
Yeah.
And it's available in several formats, isn't it? CD, vinyl.
Yeah. And the box set is, I've got to say, is a beautiful thing to behold. Yeah. I've got my copy, and it's very nice. So,
well, look at the artwork. We've got to mention the artwork. It just fits, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean,
which is just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, I've seen all of Roger's sleeves. And you think, well, he's never going to top that. He just keeps doing it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And do you have any kind of plans once the album's out to do any live gigs or anything?
Yeah, the live thing is always, it's like the sort of elephant in the room, in some ways for DBA, because obviously Geoff and I are busy with lots of other things, and yes, are a hugely busy touring machine, so we just wait for our time in the limelight, so to speak, and it will happen. It's just a case of when and how we do it, because as you say, it's to do it properly is a big undertaking.
Well, the album sounds so spectacular and so well put together, and that it sounds just so well produced that you're right. To create that live, you've got to have everything, do it right, yeah. And it would be interesting, actually, how you could play any of the tracks without them all being together. It just feels like the kind of thing that you would sit down and hear the whole thing. Again, the whole aspect of this is one of those albums that feels like it should be heard in its entirety, in that order.
Yeah.
Apart from getting up every so often to turn the vinyl copy over, if that's the one you've got.
No, I do agree. I think, and I like, obviously, Yes have done that with the album series, and Sparks did it brilliantly, and I do like that idea. So as these albums become, not our albums, but classic albums become, so special. The idea of just performing them in their entireties is becoming more and more appealing to me.
Yeah,
fan.
I do. Well, I think this album has those traits to be able to do that, because I think it's a personal album, and whether it's where I am in my life, and I'm sure lots of people are the same, but as I listened to it and went through the lyrics at the same time, I felt really connected to the songs and the spirit of what it was about, and it left a really positive feeling within me. So I think it's what you've created is just perfect for these dark times. That's how I feel about it. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Wonderful record. So I can't wait to get hold of my copy and do a proper review on it. So I think it's fantastic. So the best place for people to buy it from is all the normal outlets, or is there anywhere specific you'd like people to go?
I think all the normal outlets, Geoff, don't you think? It's widely available.
Okay, and the best place for people to find out about all your news and stuff is it your own website or?
Well, there's a DBA website, and there's also our individual website. So
and they're all interlinked, aren't they? If I remember, but I'll put the links in the bottom of the show and on the website as well. Well, thank you both. Thank you, Geoff and Chris, for your time this afternoon. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. So I wish you all luck with the album when it comes out. And everybody watching this and listening, make sure you go and buy a physical copy. And the box set sounds like the way to go.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Cheers,
so take care, and hope I'll talk to you again in the future. Phil. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right. So thank you for watching, and a big thank you to my guests, Geoff Downes and Chris Braide from the Downes Braide Association. Make sure you check out the website, which is down below this screen now, and also on the website and on the YouTube channel. The album, Celestial Songs, is out on September the 8th. And as you saw during the interview, as I talked and we talked about the tracks, it is absolutely a wonderful piece of music that deserves to be listened to from the beginning to the end. This is one of those albums where every single track segues so perfectly into the next one. It's a really positive album, lyrically, musically. It's just wonderful, and I think it's the best one they've done so far. So thank you for watching and listening. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, the website, become a patron if you can, a YouTube member, and remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Keep spinning those discs, and I shall see you on my next episode.